encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network.
You know what time it is, no matter where you've been. So let's do it again. Listen up and let the sun shine in. We've got soul training. Time to practice what you preach. Ooh, yeah. Yes, we do. We've got soul training.
And here's Daniel, Alan, and Joe.
How are you all doing?
Good.
Doing good. That's good. How are you, Daniel?
Just right, brother. How about you?
I'm doing good. You haven't said that for a while because I haven't asked that question for a while. You're just right. Like Baby Bear's porridge. Was it Baby Bear's porridge or somebody's porridge?
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm.
Okay, just right. Normally I start off with something a little piffy or a little hook or something, but not this time. I just simply wanted to say, and I think you all would chime in, just say thank you for people who listen to Soul Training. We're 5+ years into this operation now here at Soul Training Studios, but I guess what prompted me to start with levity is that I've had several people, and you have too, I'm sure, but I've had several people come up to me and go, hey, I really like that podcast, or I really like that episode, or this was really good. That made a lot of sense or something. So I just wanted to simply say thank you to all of those who listen. We do have some folks who, I don't want to phrase it as a loyal listener base, but that's kind of what it is. We have some folks who locally in our church family who, follow us and those keep up with us a little bit. So I just want to say thank you to all those folks who, it's encouraging.
I think that's fair, and we should do that. We haven't done that much, but thank you all for encouraging us. Hopefully we can continue to do this for, another 5 years. Who knows?
Hopefully,
Amen.
You never know. So with that being said, I hope I didn't disappoint you in not having a little surprise intro or anything. That was more adult type, grown up intro there, not really something middle schoolish.
Well, it wasn't very funny, but I think it was needed, so yeah. We'll take that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I do have a good dad joke for Daniel, though. I heard recently that someone approached a bank teller and asked if they would check their balance. So the teller came out from behind the counter and kind of pushed this lady to kind of check her balance a little bit. So,
yikes. So
not as good as Daniel, but I'm repeating it. And normally I'm kind of taking a liberty here. I know I don't think we've ever dedicated an episode to anybody, and that's not what I'm after, but I think we have been prompted by people who have encouraged us or challenged us or made an impact on us. And for me, you all have said, hey, why don't you kind of focus on this episode a little bit? But Matt Cook, a few weeks ago, came to our little congregation, and he
Dr. Matt Cook, Freed Hardeman University.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I was getting to that.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, Dr. Matt Cook. But that's what I love about him. He's, if he were here, he would be Matt. Yeah. I like that. I like that in folks, even if they have a terminal degree. But Dr. Matt Cook with Freed Hardeman University, Bible professor, wears a lot of hats there at that school. But his whole theme that weekend with us for our gospel meeting was about culture, challenging us to be more evangelistic, all of those things. And so that's kind of the direction I wanted to after his, actually I texted him this question. I texted you all too after he left. Is there an instrument, and I'm using, the academic folks really like this term, an instrument that is out there that would evaluate your congregation? I was trained by some of the best special education, behavior intervention folks, and they used to always like it when we would talk about using instruments to assess task analysis or to task analyze something, but to analyze how culturally relevant or plugged in we are. And Dr. Cook, he says that he is not aware of an instrument that does that. But so I kind of came up with some things to get us to be reflective, look in a mirror, so to speak, and see how are we doing kind of thing. So, and maybe challenge us.
you're asking those listening to do some self-reflection and reflection based off of your list. Is that what we're doing here?
Right.
Okay.
And hopefully we have some church leaders. Hopefully, we have some folks who, who are just seeking to be more evangelistic. And, what is this Great Commission? What's it about? Why should I share Jesus? How can I do that? Why should I be concerned? So that's kind of the angle, so to speak.
That sounds good. Well, what do you got?
Yeah,
Start
sounds
with
great.
me.
Let's go for it.
Well, I would just start with you all. How would you evaluate a congregation or a person or an individual in relation to how evangelistic? How do you measure how evangelistic or outreaching a congregation is? What would be some places, some rocks you would turn over to do some evaluation? If you're talking about your health, one of the first places your physician always starts with, let's do some blood work. So what kind of, no pun intended, but what kind of blood work would you do to measure? Am I being evangelistic? Am I sharing Christ? Are we as a congregation, are we plugging into our community?
Well, I think for me, I would be cautious of being too results oriented and would steer toward being more process oriented. And what I mean by that is don't just assume that, say, the attendance is increasing. Um, that that's a good thing, but that alone doesn't necessarily mean we're doing what we need to do about reaching lost souls. That could happen just because there's another congregation in the county or across the city that is having some problems, and so we're picking up some of their members or something like that, and we can get a false sense that things are better than they actually are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we shouldn't get excited necessarily about sheep swapping sometimes.
Yes, exactly. On the other hand, depending on where you're located and what you're facing culturally, you may be working very hard, but not seeing a lot of tangible results in terms of growth in numbers. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're not being faithful in your efforts. Um, so I would focus more on, I think numbers are good, but attendance isn't the biggest number. What are we doing in terms of reaching out? How many visits are being made? How many I don't know if you're sending cards or whatever you're doing to reach out to people, what's being done to create prospects, what's being done to develop prospects, what's being done in terms of a follow up, what are we getting in terms of Bible studies and baptisms, and these are kind of numbers that I think are more indicative of we're doing what we need to be doing evangelistically. Does that make
Right.
sense?
As you talk, I think about, I heard Keith Parker once. He talked about, and we don't have ours up here, but you used to have the board in the by the pulpit. He called it the scoreboard.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't get too focused on the scoreboard. We should be focused, like you said, on the process, so to speak. And that process, I think, involves, and I think we do track some of those things here in our congregation. How many visits. I know with me, I meet with our leadership once a month, and I try to have some things down on paper. This is what I've done, my activity reports, you might say, not to prove my job, but to show that, hey, this is some people this is the process I'm going through. So in order to be focused on that process. What about you, Joe?
I like where you guys are going. I like lists. So I think it's worthwhile for the leadership of a congregation to make a list of, just write down what tools you're using to evangelize. And then I think it's also important not just to list the programs that you're doing for evangelism, whether it's card program or door knocking or supporting missionaries, all that. But I think it's important too. Let's say you've got a congregation of, what's a good number? 100 people. Let's say we've got a congregation of 100 people here. And we want to take inventory of how evangelistic we are in our communities. Sometimes I've seen this where there's a lot of evangelism going on, but it's like 2 people out of that 100 just working their fingers to the bone. And so if you've got a list and you realize this person's doing all of the evangelism, maybe they've brought in a few families to come worship over the past year or so, but that's not really fair to that person. Everybody needs to be on board. So at that point, I think that it would be wise for the leadership of that congregation to do things to involve more people. Listen, 100 people are going to have a lot bigger footprint out there in the evangelistic world than that one person. And so I think doing whatever you can to get everybody else involved, that'd be the blood work part, I guess, is just taking care of our own internal body.
And I think to go along with that, I mean, we have to lead by, if we can open up the Bible and read and we see the urgency and feel the urgency, then we have a responsibility. And I'm not just talking about elders or church leaders, but everything rolls downhill.
You're exactly right. The eldership can't expect the members to be evangelistic if the elders are not. And the same way with the deacons, the same way with the ministers. I've seen ministers that, believe it or not, you guys have seen this too, but the minister is not overly evangelistic.
When I was in high school, one of my favorite...
Not our minister, by the way. Ministers. Yeah. Present company included.
No, that's... I understand. I'm picking up what you're laying down, Joe. I don't take it personal.
No, I'm saying you're doing great.
One of my favorite football coaches in high school, he... I mean, I don't know. He was in great shape, and it was grueling. Every summer we would go to our football camp, and we never went anywhere. Just went out to our school, but it was some summer football camp. But everything that he would ask us to do in the weight room, everything he would ask us to do, he was our strength and conditioning coach, and that was his role, and coached offensive linemen. But anyway, everything that he would ask us to do in the weight room, everything he would ask us to do during the summer workouts, he did it with us. That guy, we would do a 12-minute warm-up run. And he would run with us. We would do sprints. He would sprint with us. We would go in the weight room, and we would do all the bench military. I mean, don't want to bore you with all that, but he did every single exercise lift that we did. And so if he asked us to do something, to do a 12-minute cool down run at the end of practice, we did it. Because it came easier because he was showing us the way by example. And so I think if one of the things, what that kind of, I was going to talk about personal evangelism, but as a congregation, that you like to use your example, to get those other 98 people involved, is people will be more apt to be involved if they see others involved and say, hey, come walk with me. Let's come do this with me.
And I mean, are you more likely to be involved with something if it seems like work and it's just make it enjoyable?
Sure.
If you are one of those 2 people out of that 100 at this fictional congregation, love it. Love what you're doing out there. See the benefits of it, what the Lord's doing. Doing something with a smile is going to gain more people to follow you than just drudging through it.
I'm scared to attach a name to this quote.
Don't.
I think Ralph Waldo Emerson.
There it was.
I think he said nothing great has ever been accomplished without enthusiasm.
Yeah,
and that's all it is. I mean, you got to be enthusiastic. I mean, those kind of things.
Okay. So let's give you an example. You mentioned that you've had several people tell you how much they love the podcast, and I'm very thankful for that. Now let's say that those people that have told you that told 3 or 4 of their friends, guys, their listeners, we do this to be evangelistic, to encourage you, to do soul training. And so if this benefits you, share the podcast. Believe it or not, that's a form of evangelism.
Yeah, it is. It's another inroad. It's another inroad. And Daniel, I don't want to... me and Joe, we've got so enthusiastic here.
Daniel's remote.
We don't want to.
Daniel, tell the people where you are in the world.
He's remote, but he's always plugged in.
He is.
That's right. I'm in Texas right now, so just halfway across the country from you. But I'll be back your way pretty soon.
Sounds just like you, though.
It does.
Yeah.
That's what my mother said one time. I got my very first cell phone. I was 20 miles away, and I called her. She said, "Oh man, it sounds just like you." Like, I'm not trying to impersonate anybody, Mama. I promise, I'm not.
But something Joe said a minute ago made me think. If you are one of those one or two people in that 100-member congregation that is being active in this stuff, then rather than, hey, we need a new program, maybe we just need to increase a discipleship kind of mindset. So when you're going to do a Bible study, when you're going to make a visit, when you're going to do this kind of thing, have somebody that you're taking along with you. Invite somebody else to come alongside you and to witness that, become comfortable with doing that, and then after a while, encourage them to be going out on their own and taking somebody with them, and you have somebody else that you start taking with you. Yeah, and maybe even depending on your congregation, um, you may need to encourage some leadership by encouraging leaders to come along with you as you're doing things. But just kind of creating that mindset, that's going to spread the load a little bit when you're constantly inviting. You're having a Timothy. You're looking for Timothy's to.
And as I listen to you talk, too, it's about. And when I say empower, I mean also, people really don't mind, on the average, mind being empowered. One of our, and you all would know this guy, but one of our deacons here, he used to pick at me a little bit, like if I maybe got involved with a program or maybe our jail ministry. It's something that I was always interested in and kind of helped to grow, but I would enlist people. And this deacon, of a friend of mine of ours here, he always says, he would joke with me, he says, "Alan, you do the pyramid scheme model." I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "You get stuff started, get people involved, and you go do something else." And he was being funny, but it was being complimentary, meaning that, to Daniel's point, that if you can get people involved, like just say those two, let's go back to your two people that we don't know who they are, but if they're starting to do some visiting, like Daniel says, turn it over to them. John and Sam, whoever, I don't know. Y'all are doing a great job. Would you be willing to take this on? And that's kind of the funny with the pyramid scheme, is you kind of get them involved. Like, you took a ride, now I'm gonna bail out.
Well, if your talent is coming up with ministries, getting them off the ground, use your talent,
and then rotate out and go start something else. And
which brings me to something. I don't know where you were going to go. That was number one on your list. I think.
That was number one. But we covered a couple while we're there.
Well, I was just thinking, pretty much everything we do, how we live our lives, how we interact with people, all of that, to one extent or another, is evangelism. And so everything we do is evangelism. Keep that in mind. People are watching, especially here. We're in a small town here. Daniel, who knows where Daniel is half the time? He's all over the world.
He's in Texas.
But we're in a small town. People know us. They know where we go to church. They know what we're affiliated with. So everything we do, people are looking at and will reflect upon South Green Street and ultimately the Lord's church. But not only is that evangelism that we're all doing constantly, but we need to be creative and bold in our evangelism. I'll give you an example. We just, in a congregation that my parents used to attend, and they're bringing this here, they did a cookie ministry. And so some of the ladies down there had this cookie ministry where they would bake cookies, and they had enough people, they only had to do it, like each lady had to do it once a month, where they'd bake a couple of dozen cookies and take to the funeral homes, or maybe it was a funeral home, I forget. Anyhow, at the bottom of the cookie pan or whatever, there was just a sheet, or maybe next to it, "This is courtesy of such and such Church of Christ. We understand your mourning, and we're praying for you." And then that's it. But the people, they don't know how far and wide reaching that was, because people could have come in from the funeral and seen that, and that made an impression on them. And so there's just different things like that. It doesn't have to be door knocking. It doesn't have to be standing on the street corner shouting Bible verses at people as they drive by. You can be creative, and what might seem small could make a big impression.
And that's huge, because it makes you want to reach out to somebody, or makes you want those folks to reach out, and like they're compassionate.
Well, there's a guy we support that's an African missionary. I think it's the other side of the continent from where Daniel's usually at, in Nigeria. And he heard the gospel there was a pamphlet that was dropped from the air, and he just happened to pick it up one day and read it and studied it and believed it, wound up coming to America to a Christian university, getting all the Bible degrees and things, I suppose, went back over there, and now he's a missionary. That's what he does. Just because somebody had the idea, you know what, it would be a great thing for us just to fly over this country and drop some Christian pamphlets.
Yeah.
It worked.
The power of one.
The power, yeah.
And you mentioned you mentioned who you represent, how you live your life. If let me use one more sport analogy. Our son, he graduated from high school about 3 years ago, and he played high school football. And we would have those little talks, and I would tell him about that name on your front of your jersey means a lot, but that name on the back of your jersey means a whole lot more. And it's kind of like with us when we go out. We represent our families, but we're also representing our congregation. We're also representing Christ. We're also representing, we're ambassadors for Christ. So it's how we live our life too. Even down to the cookie ministry, with the outreach with these community organizations, who else you make an impact on? Staff members, funeral home staff,
Well, that's right. Mama says that whenever they were doing that in Tennessee, that they actually started getting calls from the funeral home directors. Hey, we're out of cookies. And whenever they get there, they say, well, I always like to try, one, make sure it's okay. It's not.
It's good.
But they recognize what the church is doing.
I'm not minimizing it at all, but it's good public relations.
It is.
And the church needs good, Christ is the product we're pushing, but in order to do that, you got to have good public relations too.
And I don't want to capitalize I don't want to be the whole conversation here, but I do want to mention one more thing, is that in the Bible, we've got several examples. I talked to you guys in our pregame a second ago. We've got Noah. He was bold in his evangelism because, like I said, everybody in, I guess, was it town, everybody around there in that area knew he was building a boat. And I'm sure the conversation came about, hey, Noah, what's up with the boat? Well,
didn't have it in his garage.
It wasn't in his garage. It was a big boat. And so they knew he was building it. And my guess is they probably knew why he was building it. He was bold to do that. Paul was bold. He went around preaching in places that were less than ready to hear what he wanted to say.
Not receptive to him.
That believed totally different philosophies than what he was trying to preach. Yet he went there. The apostles, they all spread out right after Jesus died, and they started their ministries. They went everywhere. They all just spread out of Jerusalem to different places. You've got Jesus. I mean, do we need there is no better example than Jesus being bold in what he is saying and going into places that you wouldn't think people would be receptive, like a synagogue. Yet people there marveled at what he was saying. And
boldness rooted in compassion.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to reach, like even down to a cookie ministry, that's rooted in compassion.
Yeah.
That's where it's rooted in.
I mean, really, what are we doing here?
Matthew chapter 9, 35 through 38, where Christ demonstrates compassion. He sees people who are hurting. Here we might say we see people who are dealing with problems at a funeral home. I know when we first came here, our challenges and the loss of loved ones, but I remember we had some older ladies here when we first started coming to this congregation. They used to, do you remember the teddy bear ministry?
Yeah, did you go to the hospital?
Went to the hospital.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, it was my daughter actually. We weren't attending here, but she had some type of surgery when she was super small, and she kept that teddy bear for. We ended up having a fire at our house. It's somewhere, I'm sure, but and it was I know it seems small, but it was a teddy bear ministry. I mean, it had the congregation's name on it, contact information, and all those things. So we've knocked out a couple of other points. I was asking what activities or energy are we putting forth. I think all of those things. And like Daniel said, I mean, it's not all about numbers, but also I think part of the evaluation of the blood work is when I get my blood results back, I mean, I immediately get out a highlighter, or the doctor does, and starts highlighting, oh, man,
what you need to work on.
I need to work on this. So I think it's important to monitor those things. I mean, there was a guy who founded a pizza company that I used to really love that pizza. I don't want to mention it because I really tried to stay away from that pizza because it messes up my blood work. Uh-huh. But one of his taglines, he always says that what gets measured gets done. And I agree with it.
Better ingredients, better.
Yeah, it was better ingredients, better pizza from the Kentucky-Indiana border.
Mama Jones.
Yeah,
that's right.
Was that her name? Was that his mother? I don't think that was his mother's name. I don't. I don't. His first name was John. That was his first name.
I think everybody knows.
But he always.
You're so subtle and discreet.
I know, is the crust, man. I was addicted to that crust. Sorry, it was so good. From how can we kind of regulate our efforts to be biblically focused? I think a congregation, I know that we try to have that here, that our opportunities when these doors are open, Bible, our program, our lessons are rooted in Scripture. Our Bible classes are rooted in Scripture. It's not rooted in entertainment. Obviously you got to have somebody to kind of, if you're teaching a class, to hold people's interest. I get that. But it's all rooted in Scripture. It's teaching. It's plain teaching. There was an older gentleman who told me one time, he said, preaching and teaching, that's where it's at. And that seems simple, but that's the truth. Preaching and teaching is where it's at. How would you all recommend to get feedback? I think you tried a survey once, didn't you? Didn't you try a survey once?
I thought you did the survey.
No, I've done a couple of surveys. I learned my lesson.
We mentioned that on our live episode.
I'm not going to do that anymore. But didn't you do a survey once about something? I thought you did, about you're trying to get feedback about something.
I don't know.
You don't know?
Maybe.
But how do we get others involved in the process that Daniel talks about?
Daniel.
Well, a lot of it is just by invitation. I mean, you can do programs and set up sign up lists and stuff like that, and that'll get a certain amount of involvement. But a lot of it also just has to be kind of the more difficult work of personal invitations. Hey, will you help me with this? Footwork, yeah.
Footwork, and just those personal relationships. And it's hard. I mean, Joe's right. I mean, when you have to literally, basically beg, sometimes people to be involved in something that gets draining for you, or emotionally draining. And then, I've done everything from, I'll talk to you, I'll text you, I might send you an email, I might come back, talk to you again. And it's just, it can wear on you, but you have to be careful not allow it to wear on you. But, I
think one thing, the problem is sometimes it's hard to get everybody involved in evangelism. And we mentioned a couple of solutions as kind of doing an inventory of what evangelistic efforts are happening there, and then who is participating in those. And by you find out who's participating, you learn who's not participating in anything too, getting the whole body into evangelism.
I suggested that to you back when you were kind of doing the grief, or the, not grief, but the support. You remember that when you met with us a couple of months ago, or like 4 or 5 months ago? That was one of the things as far as how you get more people involved. This is just a suggestion, is you look at all your ministry efforts, and you literally write down who's involved, and then you cross-reference that with our roster, who's not involved, and go to them and say, how can you be more involved?
Because some people it's not that they don't want to be involved, it's that they're uncomfortable volunteering. They would rather be asked.
Yeah, some people, and if you allow me to use to your point, a third, athletic, ministry. There was a really very successful high school football program not too far from here, and one of the things that the coach said that helped him turn the corner with his program, he would just go out and eat and just go to the cafeteria and just sit down and start talking to guys. Hey, you look like you'd be a good football player, and they'd never been asked before. The next thing you know, you get 5, 10, 15 guys, at a middle size.
Well, again, he was bold. He was stepping outside of his comfort zone and taking a leap there, asking these guys that.
Treat people how they how you want them to be, and then they'll become what they should be.
But also, I think there's value in.
You didn't miss that tagline, did you? No. But
I think there's value in the church being together and developing relationships because, here at South Green, we're a large congregation. And sometimes it's hard, every time it's hard to talk to everybody that's here every service. You just can't do it because there's several hundred people here. But as you build relationships, people are going to be more likely to jump into a program if they know the person that's leading it, other than just, I don't know anything about the person leading it. I don't know anything about the program. I don't know anything about what your goal here is. If you build relationships internally, then they'll trust you as a leader getting that off the ground.
People will become interested in you when you become interested in them.
Yeah.
Dale Carnegie.
Is that who said that?
I'm sure it is.
I thought it was, who say Emerson?
No, it was Ralph Waldo Emerson earlier. It was about enthusiasm.
It's probably Mark Twain. He said everything, didn't he?
Yeah. What's the thing that says everything's a quote from Abraham Lincoln? It's got to be true because on the internet.
Yeah, saw it on Facebook.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, guys, that's pretty much our time. Is there anything we haven't touched on? I know, Alan, we got like one out of your list.
Yeah, I've got a whole list. I thought this was a 3-hour podcast. Is that not true?
It could be, right?
It could be.
Go ahead, Daniel, please.
Well, I was just going to say, I'd like to point out, too, that with the way technology is now, and there are ways that the local congregation can be involved in not only local evangelism, but world evangelism from right there where you are. And you've got programs like World Bible School, for example, that allow you to grade and be a correspondence course teacher with students that are all over the world, in Africa or Asia, other places. And then that after, you go through the studies and you get a good prospect, and then you're able to connect them with, local evangelists that kind of, finish the job. And so there's just so many ways to be involved these days.
Didn't you have correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, but wasn't there someone that had was doing a Bible study with someone we didn't know that came here to be baptized because of Facebook, essentially?
The Gospel Broadcasting Network.
Can you tell that story real quick?
What I remember was that I remember getting a Facebook message from someone with the Gospel Broadcasting Network that they had been studying with someone in our community, and through their outreach efforts at GBN, and they had requested to be baptized, and so they knew we were in the area, of course, and they just sent a simple Facebook message, and we came up and studied with them and a little more, and this lady was baptized, and she's still in our community, and she placed membership here. She's had some other, I think, maybe logistical issues come her way,
Sure.
but somebody in our congregation is still working with her and still helping her. But that was from the Gospel Broadcasting Network.
Right.
Don.
And that's an evangelistic endeavor. And so you just never know. If you're putting evangelism out there, even if you're not seeing droves of people line up behind you to follow to the church building to be baptized, it's still some good being. Anything you can do in the name of Christ that's sound Bible, there's no bad that can come from it.
Yeah, there's just so much technology. There's nothing, there's nothing ever lost. And to your point, that everything's to be gained and nothing is lost. And the only thing I would end with is, that I would just, as Dr. Matt Cook challenged us, I would challenge individuals, elderships, congregations. This, use one more metaphor. I'm a school teacher, and sometimes we're targets. If you have a friend who's in the insurance business or in the sales business, they sometimes go after teachers like, hey, you should come work for me, or you should come consider doing this, because you know a lot of people. And on the average, most teachers don't mind talking to people. So I was recruited a few years ago by a lady. Her sister was in the insurance and the / financial business. And it sounded good on the front end. So I went to some meetings, and, I knew enough to know that at some point I'm going to have to get a license to sell these products. But it just seems like I went to several meetings, and all we did was talk about team building. It ended up being a true pyramid scheme is what happened. I didn't know it until months after I'd paid $250 to be a part of it. Never got that money back. But
well, you didn't follow their plan.
I did not. I left because I was interested in hey, when are we going to get out of these meetings and go start talking to people to sell the products, to go through the process and have outcomes. But all we did was just sit and gather and just talk about team building. And nothing ever happened.
You didn't build a team.
I had my team ready, but nothing. There was no leadership. So I would just use that. Take you on that journey. Is that have plans and have programs and have strategies, but as Daniel says, go through the process and finish. Provide sales. Sell after the service, so to speak, to provide support and follow up with the fortunes in the follow up, of how you keep people connected and help people growing and mission efforts are obviously great, but do something with, like you mentioned that one, several years ago we went to our little community and we gathered information, but was anything ever done with that?
I didn't mention that on the air, but we had gone around door knocking, asking people for Bible studies. And we gathered the information. Those Bible studies never happened. It was a wasted opportunity.
Leads.
We had leads. But before I hand it back to Daniel, I just want to say, if you are one of these folks that are constantly looking for ways to evangelize, and you're out there and you're doing it, keep it up. Keep it up. And if you're not, if you're a Christian and you take an inventory of your life and your time and what you're doing, and there's an opening there for you to evangelize, seek that out. Seek people who are doing it, offer to help them, and I promise they'll take your help. They'll show you what they're doing and where they could use your help at.
Because people are looking. People
are looking. If you have a talent, so I don't know if it's a talent, but I know how to be an audio engineer. And so that is what led to the podcast. I was taking inventory of my talents, and I thought, well, I can record people talking and put that out. And well, here we are. And so everybody's got a talent. Even if you think you don't, you do. Figure out a way to use that.
One of your talents is you prompt me to have prompts to think. So, to your point, and I want you to finish your thought.
I prompt you to have prompts.
Don't quit. 1 Corinthians 15:58. Joe has driven me to this page. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. So, if you're one. You're made in God's image. You can have an impact. So, don't quit.
That's right. Very good. Now, Daniel, do you have any encouraging words for the people? We hadn't talked about the people much. But
that's who supports
the people.
Us, I'm loyal. That's what I tried to do in the beginning, to say thank you.
Well, I think that most Christians probably want to be more evangelistic, because if you really believe in our faith and you really believe in the message of the Bible, then it's the greatest thing in the world, and you want to share that with people. And uh, don't don't be afraid to share that enthusiasm. And the more you get out there, the more you do it, the more you start those conversations, the more comfortable you feel. It can just be intimidating when you are getting started. Um, but there's nothing in the world like the feeling of helping somebody come to Christ and experience the joy found in Christ that you're able to have.
That's right. Okay. Well, we're over time, and so if there's nothing else, Daniel, you can take us home.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, dear listener, for letting us be a part of your spiritual diet today. Thank you for listening to the podcast. We'd ask you to give it a good rating and review and share it with others so that maybe they'll hear things on the podcast as well that would be beneficial to them. Like Joe mentioned earlier, could be an evangelistic thing that you do that's small and pretty easy to do. We also want to thank the elders at the South Grand Street Church of Christ for making soul training possible. And on behalf of Alan and Joe, I'm Daniel. Until next time, keep soul training.
Soul training. Time to practice what you preach. Ooh, yeah. Yes, we do. We've got soul training.
To learn more, you can email us at soultrainingpodcast@gmail.com, or you can write to us, P.O. Box 503, Glasgow, Kentucky, 42142. That's Soul Training.